everyone, and welcome back to this episode of the BKTY podcast. I am your host, Hallie, and this is a solo episode. I don't have John with me, but we were kind of talking, and even when we formed this podcast, we knew that we wanted this to be a platform in which we could both express our opinions and our different beliefs and everything that just comes in between, having completely different life experiences. And so last week you guys heard from John, and so he was like, Hallie, why don't you take the reins and, share your thoughts, put something out into the world? And I was like, fuck yeah. So we are here. And this week we're going to be talking about the feeling of unrest and uncomfortability, which is kind of like a weird feeling and kind of like a weird theme for this episode. But I read an Instagram caption that I really thought spoke to me and spoke to the world as a whole and current events and everything that's going on. So I actually thought that I would read it for you guys to start off, and just note that this isn't the whole caption. This is because, it was a really long caption, which I thought was really great. And I would say all of it, but, I think I would just lose your interest or something. I don't know. But anyways, these are the parts that I've picked from it that I really thought stood out to me and spoke to our world as a whole. So it starts like this. The shift is here. When it is time for change, the universe will make it so uncomfortable that it will become near impossible for the same dysfunctional patterns to continue repeating. Our old ways of existing have become unsustainable. A radical shift, in parentheses, personally, collectively, and even globally, in parentheses, is necessary and is here, knocking at our doors. What happens next is up to you. Written by Sienna Elise, and it's just her Instagram's at Sienna Elise. She's I don't know, kind of, I wouldn't say a lifestyle influencer. I don't know. She's a yogi. You might be into that, you might not be, but either way, I just really love the words that she wrote, and it basically inspired this entire podcast episode, because I thought it was fascinating what she says. When it's time for change, the universe will make it so uncomfortable that it will become near impossible for the same dysfunctional patterns to continue repeating. I just wanted to emphasize that for you all. That's damn. That's really all I gotta say. Damn. She really hit the nail on the head right there. And I think that really reflects what's going on in our world right now. We started out 2020. I think all of us were oh my god, this is going to be the best year ever. We're just going to crush it. 2020 is going to be our bitch. All this stuff. We really went there with it. And so far that has not happened. I feel it's kind of been a joke among all of humanity. Guys, what were we thinking saying 2020 was going to be our year? This is a shit show. Shit has really hit the fan. And I'm laughing because it's almost laughable, how crazy this year has been so far. But at the same time, the way that I view it, it's what if the world and the universe is trying to fucking tell us something, What if 2020, instead of looking at it in such a negative light, what if we look at it in a positive light and think about it what if this is actually the year, of purpose and of cleansing our earth and addressing issues that are real and prevalent in our world, which I feel hasn't happened on this kind of scale before. So for example, we started out 2020 with the Australian bushfires, which that fucking sucked to say, which is an understatement for sure. But how can you even put that into words? I feel I cannot use words to describe how sad and terrible that was. And it continued with, I remember on Valentine's Day, it was the memorial of the shooting in Parkland, and really stirred up a lot of feelings for people, especially because on a wide global scale. Like, we really thought, or not global scale, but like a countrywide scale in America, because this is where I live, or me and John live. We live in Florida. I feel like we really thought that Parkland was going to be the thing that enacted change when it came to guns and, you know, like regulation and like closing the loopholes and, you know, with our fucked up system. But that like didn't really happen for us. So I think when that came around on the 14th of February, we were all just very, I don't know, it like really struck a chord. And like, at least for me, like I know a lot of people that went to that school. So it just like, I don't know, hit a sore spot for me. And it was a sad moment of reflection. I didn't reflect on it too fondly. And so then that was followed by coronavirus, which in part is also similarly caused by environmental issues. At least I've read reports saying, you know, that has been allowed to happen because of the environment and like how we treat it. I'm not gonna like, that's not the point of today's podcast, so like I'm not gonna get into that, but you can do your own research. But yeah, we had the coronavirus that literally shut the entire world down, which was like literally has not happened in living memory. And so I think all of us were really taken aback, like, shit, 2020, like what is going on? And then, you know, fast forward a few months and you hit Memorial Day weekend, and actually Memorial Day itself, with the killing of George Floyd. And I think that really deeply struck a chord within America and society as a whole. With the globalization of tech, I feel like even, you know, of course, America is deeply impacted by that event, but I know that has also started protests and riots in other countries. Like I remember seeing something in London, how they were having a huge protest there, seeing it in major cities in Australia, and across the world, that this event, even though it just started in America, it really struck a chord with everyone worldwide. And it's a terrible event. I mean, I feel so devastated thinking about his daughter and his family and his community that he impacted so deeply. And there's never going to be a way to fill that hole that was his life and just all the impact he had as a person. That will never, that's just, it's lost, and you're never going to gain that back. And it's terrible. Because losing a person is not, it's the most heart-wrenching feeling. But I think about what has happened since his death. In the wake of his death, people have stood up saying, enough is enough, you know, and I don't want to make this whole podcast about it, but I definitely want to address this issue for sure. Because I think it really relates so much to that caption I read, you guys, where when it's time for a change, I'm just going to repeat this again because I just feel like it's so important and it hones in the whole message. When it's time for a change, the universe will make it so uncomfortable that it will become near impossible for the same dysfunctional patterns to continue repeating. And I think that's what people really felt when they heard about George Floyd's death, is that they felt pissed off and angry that this system and our dysfunctional patterns that are continually repeating over and over again, no matter how many people of color have to die, I think people are fucking fed up. I mean, I know I am. And they want change. And I think that, like, all of us have just felt so uncomfortable and unsettled by this feeling that we can no longer exist in this kind of world that systemically oppresses people of color, you know? And I'm not even just talking about in America. I'm talking with global imperialism, you know, the effects of slavery across the world and imperialism. You know, this isn't just an American-based issue. It's a worldwide issue. But I mean, for me especially, like, it really hits home in America because, I mean, you grow up hearing about, obviously, like, the effects of slavery and everything that has happened with that. But you don't really grow up learning about how that has really turned into like the systematic oppression of people of color, which, you know, that's like a whole other podcast. And I'm not a person of color, so I feel like if you're going to educate yourself, like reach out to the resources that like know the best information about it. And that's just like not talking about me, because I'm still trying to get educated. I'm still trying to hear marginalized voices and understand where they're coming from. But I recommend this for everyone. And I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but like, fucking get educated. Yes, this is the season of education. We're all inside. There's nothing else we can do. And all we have at our fingertips is the fucking internet, okay? And globalization, and being able to hear melanated voices and marginalized voices, and being able to celebrate them for everything they are. And fucking get educated. Sorry, I'm getting a little too like heated and passionate about it, but basically, I think that all of us just stirred in this feeling of being fed up, which led to the protests and the riots across nearly every major city in the US. I know that for sure. But major cities across the entire globe, I just think while it's terrible that George Floyd had to die for this to happen, and is not, like, once again, I can't even imagine the type of loss that his family members and community must be feeling. But it really stirred change. And I'm kind of warmly thinking about like Gianna Floyd. There's a video of her circulating around the internet. You might have seen it, or you might not have, but she basically is on top of a man's shoulders and she goes, "Daddy changed the world." And I think that's really it. And I don't know why that it's so like gut-wrenching to think about, but at the same time, it's beautiful that we've all come together to stand up together and unite and say, this is an issue we are no longer tolerating. This is something that needs to change, and it needs to change now. We cannot go on another day, another second with this type of oppression of a group of people in our country that deserve to be treated like literally like why, who, what, when, where, and why. Like, why should these people be treated any differently? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And when you really get educated and like watch some of the amazing documentaries and like read the amazing books that like describe what it's like to be systematically oppressed, it just makes you fucking pissed off. And at the same time, like, I think that's beautiful. Like, I think it's so cool that like all of us are now getting educated together, and we're all like just fucking listening to our Black and brown brothers and sisters. Like, I think that's amazing. And that like we have so much potential for change and growth, because like, who's saying we can't grow? Like, who? Like, I definitely know the police is probably like not super into us growing and becoming empowered and shit, but you know, like, good for us. Like, I just think this is great for the world. And I know that was like a really long fucking tangent to what I'm trying to say, but I really think that this passage in this Instagram caption reflects that. It's like we're all so uncomfortable with the same shit happening over and over and over again. You know, whether it's the killing of innocent Black people in our country, or whether it's like constantly hearing about environmental issues that are happening in our world, and like having none of our politicians or government officials or anyone, like, I mean, in America, they don't even like fucking recognize that this is an issue, which is just absurd in its own way, which I won't get into because this is not a political rant, okay? Even though it's kind of turned into one, like, this should not be a politically divisive issue, which is why I'm like, you know, getting mad about it, of course. But anyways, okay. Moving on, Hallie, don't get too wrapped up into environmentalism. If you guys know me, personally, you know that, like, I'm so, like, passionate about this kind of shit. So this is actually, like, slightly problematic that, like, I have a whole fucking audience that can listen because I don't think I'll ever shut up, but maybe that's the point. But anyways, whether it's the injustices against people of color across the world, whether it's the environmental issues that we are failing to recognize and just ignoring it, because if we ignore it, then it's not a problem. Whether it's, you know, like the other various social issues that are happening in our country, like related to gun rights, killing of children in our schools. These are all feelings that, to sum it all up, make us extremely uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me to think about the oppression of people of color in our country. It's not just uncomfortable, it's outraging, honestly. So I believe that would probably be an understatement, like grandly an understatement. But it's frustrating and uncomfortable to think about people ignoring climate change. It's frustrating and uncomfortable and deeply unsettling to think about people ignoring like others' fundamental rights of like living and getting an education without worrying about whether they have to like dive under a desk to avoid being shot out by, an assault rifle. Which, I'm still trying not to get political, but like here I am. So I'll just move on. These feelings that make us so uncomfortable. I really love what Sienna says in her passage because it makes us want to change. It's almost like the universe is forcing us to be so uncomfortable that we have to change our habits. We have to change the way we talk to each other. We have to change the way we think about our current systems and society. And we have to change the way that we think about ourselves and how we like address each other and ourselves because we're so deeply uncomfortable that we can no longer keep it going at the rate that it's going at. To sum it up. So long introduction later. The feeling of being uncomfortable. Yeah, it sucks because obviously it's like really fucking uncomfortable. But at the same time, it can also be so beautiful and allow for all of us to grow independently, or even collectively, or even globally at this rate, into just like a better fucking world. And maybe that's too optimistic. Maybe that's just like the glass is so half full that it's overflowing. Like maybe I'm really milking it here. But honestly, like if you don't have hope for our world, like what's the point? Like what's the point of even existing if you don't believe that there could be something better and that all of us, we could work together to make something better? Because like I feel like that's why we're here. I mean, partially. Maybe that's not the whole reason why we're here, but like it's definitely like a fucking important factor. So sorry I'm cursing so much. If you know me, like I kind of have a mouth of a sailor, and it's not anything I intend. It's just like genuinely I just get heated. Like I get passionate about the things I talk about, and for some reason like the F-bomb just starts flying. Who knew? But whatever. This is it. If you're worried about the F-bomb, like there's worse things to be worried about, which I doubt anyone actually is. But anyways, so yeah, feeling uncomfortable. It can be amazing. And I think so often it's like we look at the feeling of being uncomfortable, and of course like we're uncomfortable, like it's probably our natural fight or flight reaction, like, oh, this is uncomfortable, let's get out of here. Like, this is like what our brains are naturally wired to do. We are wired to run away from feelings that make us uncomfortable. We are wired to quickly escape, get into a safe position, get into a safe surrounding and environment, which is good. I would definitely say there's some situations in which you feel physically at risk with an uncomfortable relationship, which we will get into. That's a situation where maybe your fight or flight instincts are maybe trying to tell you something a little good and beneficial, like maybe you should exit that toxic relationship and walk away and get to safer, more open relationships. But that's something we can talk about a little bit later. But yeah, confronting these feelings, it's not something we're naturally wired to do. But when we do, like right now in the world, when we're confronting systematic oppression of people of color, it allows for an opportunity for change. And it allows for an opportunity to grow and transcend our current situations, and become better and demand a better world, and, hold it up to that promise, and hope that it can become better. So, yeah, when you feel uncomfortable with a situation, especially if it's a global social issue, speak up. Speak up for the people, especially if you have privilege to do so. Speak up for the people that can't speak up for themselves. Because I feel like that's what having empathy and having, keeping and holding space for people, that's what that looks like. That's advocating for people who need help, especially, and this is directly relating to our current issues, but not to go into a side tangent again, but part of that is standing up for those people. But also confronting the feelings that are uncomfortable. This might not just be in relation to global issues at hand. This can very easily be issues in your current life, So often we're faced, as individuals with feelings of restlessness, uncomfortability, like there's just something missing or there's something wrong, or for some reason the hairs on our back of our heads stick up and we can't figure out why, and we don't know where they're coming from, but we know that there's something, instinctually wrong in a situation. That, identifying those feelings and looking for where those are stemming from and rooted from, you'd be surprised by how much transformational growth can happen from those weird and uncomfortable and unsettling feelings. Because of course they're unsettling for a reason. It's easier to keep a blissful state of mind, thinking ignorance is bliss, and that, hey, I don't have any issues, I don't have any problems, if I just don't think about it, it's not going to be an issue for me. I mean, hey, I've been there, I've done that. But let me tell you that the uncomfortable feeling, you might be putting it, in a little box in the back of your head, but that box is still there. It's not going away. And, maybe you're not into the idea of having to open that box and unpack every uncomfortable feeling that you've suppressed and not wanted to deal with. But then that box is empty once you've taken all those items out and you've dealt with them. The box is empty. And you have room for other things to put in that box, like loving relationships, positive body image, or anything else you want to fill yourself up with and have yourself be more fulfilled by. But when you have all those uncomfortable feelings that you don't want to deal with, and they're taking up so much space in your mind, taking up all your boxes, then there's a problem there. And that can even be when you start to lose function in your day-to-day life. And I can tell you from personal experience, that is something that I've dealt with. For me, I really struggle with anxiety. That is just something, it runs in my family. Not to just blame it on that. I'm sure there's in part, there's genetics, and of course there's environmental factors. And for me, just both of those hit a home run for the anxiety front. And yeah, it's something I've always really struggled with. But this year, it really started to regress and get worse. And actually not this year. It would probably be last fall. It's like when I really started to notice that it was becoming an issue. It was almost like, to bring back the box metaphor, it's almost like all my boxes in my brain were filled up, all my compartments were filled up with anxious thoughts and behaviors. It was filled up with fears, thinking about things in the past that have happened that I just keep replaying in my head over and over and over again. It could be things in the future that I'm worried about. It could be an upcoming homework assignment, or an upcoming date, or an upcoming event that I have to go to, or speak in front of people at. So it could be past, it could be the future, it could be any number of things. But I just notice them playing in my head like an endless loop. And I keep thinking about them and thinking about them. And each time I do that, it's almost like I'm putting a new item into one of my boxes of just uncomfortability, of restlessness. And I'm slowly starting to fill up all my boxes in my head to where I eventually would just find myself unable to function. And, it wasn't like this every single day. There's definitely good days and bad days, just like anything or anyone that struggles with mental health. You can definitely attest to this. There's good days and bad days. But, while the good days might have looked great, the bad days were bad. And I just remember finding myself laying in my bed. I couldn't sleep. It was a nighttime. I couldn't move, and I couldn't turn my brain off. And I just kept thinking and thinking and thinking, and I couldn't do anything. And it was scary, and I just started crying because I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And it was like all my boxes were filled so high to the brim that I couldn't find space for anything else that would give me peace or joy in that kind of situation. Not to go down a completely dark path with you all. Very emotional. No, I'm just kidding. But, like, I'm fine. But these are all things that we deal with as people, you know, especially if you struggle with mental health, which, I mean, all of us, I feel like, have days, even if you don't have, like, a specific issue, you know, all of us have anxious days. All of us have depressive days. You might not have depression, but you might have depressive days, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm not a fucking psychologist, but like, this is just my experience. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is that all of us can resonate with this feeling of being so uncomfortable in just whatever it is, you know? And that's, I'm kind of leaving it as an open-ended statement because it could look different to every single number of people. For me, I was uncomfortable with my mind and my mental health. You know, like sitting with those feelings and not being able to like process them and like think them actually through, and just like put a bookend on my thought and go to sleep, you know, just has it replaying over and over and over again for me. That was a severe issue that I was very uncomfortable with. For you, it might be that you're uncomfortable in your body. Maybe you look at yourself in the mirror and you feel like, how am I in my skin right now? And it just like, you know, whatever feelings that might come with that, you might feel disgusted, which I really hope not. You might feel insecure. You might feel whatever you feel about your body. And it's a sense of uncomfortableness that resonates with you, plays over and over in your gut and in your mind. It might be that you're in a really uncomfortable relationship, okay? And this could also look any number of ways, just like all of this. You know, it's not one size fit all. It's whatever pertains to you and your current situation. We're meeting you where you're at, okay? So wherever you're at, hello. Nice to meet you. I'm Hallie. But yeah, you might be in an uncomfortable relationship. Maybe it's uncomfortable because like you can't let yourself, like you're just say, okay, I'm trying to think of like the best way to explain this, but like just say you're in a relationship and all your boxes are already filled by whatever is going on in your own mind, that it's almost like you're running out of boxes to put your partner in with you. So like there might be nothing wrong with them. They might be fucking great. And you're like, damn it, why can't I just like let myself be in this relationship? Because I felt that way before. Like, why can't you just like let yourself be happy? And not actually like asking you guys that, but like that might be a thought that it's replaying in your head. So maybe sitting with that uncomfortable feeling, like what is that? Like, why can't I let myself have something good that could really benefit me? And it also might be something like, you know, on the flip side, maybe you're with a person who makes you feel uncomfortable. So maybe it's a toxic relationship, you know, maybe you're having to deal with this person who makes you feel just inferior, and they try to manipulate you, or they might even abuse you, not just physically, but maybe emotionally. And that's fucking uncomfortable because you're like, how did I get here? How do I get out? I don't want to hurt them, but also I need to protect myself. That is deeply uncomfortable. Ugh. That's like so uncomfortable. Even just thinking about it. That hasn't even happened to me. But just, well, I mean, it hasn't happened to me recently. But thinking about it, I don't know. Makes me feel like just thinking about it. So basically what I'm trying to say is being uncomfortable and having uncomfortable feelings could look any number of ways. You know, it's like not a one size fit all. And it might be that during your life, you go through multiple kind of rounds of feeling uncomfortable. Maybe in one period of time, you're like uncomfortable with a relationship, or one period of time you're uncomfortable with your body. You know, these are all things like, we're fucking human. We have like emotions, and we're not just static, we're ever changing. And so dealing with feeling uncomfortable, it's stuff that we might have learned how to do along the way, just living. But we might have done it by shoving those uncomfortable feelings in a box and taping it shut and not dealing with it. You know, not dealing with why we're uncomfortable. Where do these feelings stem from? And most importantly, how can we resolve this feeling? In a global sense, we're resolving it by protesting. I mean, you're hearing about all these people riot, and almost it's like they're purging out this like inner emotion of like anger and frustration and uncomfortability with the system, and they like, I don't know, light something on fire, and you're like, yes, catharsis. Not saying that's actually what's happening, but I feel like that's how I would feel, you know, just thinking about maybe the emotions that are going on through some people's heads, you know, and dealing with those uncomfortable feelings. So yeah, it could look any number of ways. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, we're all different. We're all unique, and we have our own life experiences, and you might experience these uncomfortable feelings in multiple situations. But the best thing you can do to equip yourself, because you know these are going to happen. You're going to go through your life and you're going to feel uncomfortable in situations. But what do we do from there? You know, how do we address it? And I just feel like that's like, it's so fucking important, and no one talks about it. No one talks about, you know, confronting your feelings. If anything, our society tells us, well, nowadays we're getting a little more, I don't know, progressive with it, and really opening up and sharing about mental health struggles and stories, and, you know, building a community within each other. Now, what I would say is the best way to start to unpack that box of uncomfortability is starting small. I mean, you might be listening to this episode already thinking about what that feeling is. And yes, I'm calling you out on it now. Think about that feeling and acknowledge it if you do have a feeling like that. And let it resonate with you, because acknowledging is the first step. You know, you have to realize that you have that feeling or something that you've yet to deal with within yourself. And so taking a moment and pausing and reflecting on it and saying, shit, okay, I have to fucking deal with this. Oh, that sucks, but I'm gonna be better for it. And at least that's good. So, you know, it's like, it's not gonna be like, you know, a perfect, like, fight. Like, does that make sense? Like, you dealing with your emotions, it's not gonna be fun, okay? It's not going to. But here's the thing, if we continue to just like keep that box shut, like, how long is it gonna stay shut? Are we just like never gonna unpack those feelings? And what will that do to your future relationships? What will that do to your future self? You know, like, it's almost, you know, even though it's extremely uncomfortable, it's almost like the sooner we unpack it, the better, because that allows us to stop having that ankle weight just kind of dragging us down. Instead, we can unpack those things and feel free and feel like a better version of ourselves, because who doesn't want to start being the best versions of themselves, like, as soon as you can? I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little optimistic here again, but I think it's important. And while it's not fun dealing with these feelings, you will have long-term effects, positive effects, by dealing with these feelings, even if you don't think there's going to be. You never know how, for me, like, my anxiety, oh my God, that affects my relationships like crazy. It really does. And of course, I'm trying to work on it, as I was saying before. You know, I didn't even kind of end my story. What I was going to say is, you know, I decided that I needed to get on medication, you know, and that was all that uncomfortability stirring in my head with my anxiety. The result was, shit, okay, fuck, I need to address my issues And maybe there's a chemical imbalance in my head, and maybe I should actually seek medical help to help me. Yeah, that's not like a fun fucking feeling to go through. But at the same time, like, I will tell you, I feel so much better now. And of course, like, I need to still like go to therapy. I need to still like, I feel like everyone should go to therapy, but I know for me, like, I can really benefit from that. I need to continue journaling. I need to continue like talking to John or any close friends that like really hold space for my feelings. I need to like, there's so many things I can still do. But I've identified that feeling of being uncomfortable, stopping in my tracks and saying, okay, universe, I hear your plea. I'm going to address this. And I honestly think, even though the journey isn't over, of course, it's a beautiful start, and I'm really happy to see that this is like a direction that like I'm taking myself, and like I'm willing to prioritize self-care in such a way that like I know it's going to be beneficial for myself in the future. And so yeah, I don't know, it just like makes me really like happy to just know that that's a possibility. And I hope that's maybe how you feel when you think about your current situation. Like, oh my fucking god, it literally sucks to struggle with mental health. Like, mental health is a bitch and a half, like, let me tell you. But once you start to actually deal with the things that are holding you down, and the things that are just weighing on your heart and your mind and your soul and your being, I know I'm getting like a little existential, or like, am I like too motivational speaker? Like, I don't know. But once you start to actually deal with those issues, man, does it get better. And it really does. So how do you do that? How do you start? Oh, I just knocked something over. Sorry if you heard that. I'm like waving my hands in the air because like it's almost like I'm talking to like a real person, but I'm just fucking talking to myself. But you kind of sit and you think and you go, okay, I've identified that feeling. That's fucking step one, okay? I've identified it. I have anxiety. That's me. That's me in my experience. Okay. So you think to yourself, I have blank, or like, I'm dealing with blank. This is my uncomfortable feeling. All right. Let it sit on yourself. Just say like, fuck, or like yell out loud or something and be like, ugh, that sucks. And then say, okay, take a breath. What can I do about it? So I recommend this to everyone. And John, if he were here, he would literally recommend it to like 10 times over. He would say, journal, 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 journal. Okay. Because even if you've never picked up a journal in your life and you're like, okay, this is even more uncomfortable than the feeling I was dealing with, because like I feel like such a goof writing my feelings down, like I'm in a diary or something. I think I felt that at first. But now I love it because I used to be embarrassed, like thinking like, oh, like, do I have a diary? Like, I don't know. But honestly, I love it now because it's literally benefiting my mental health, and it's allowing me to like write down my thoughts and my feelings. Like, even if I have no one to talk to, it's almost like recording this podcast. I could literally just talk to myself and write down the thoughts and the emotions. And it doesn't have to be like pretty or anything. It could literally be some journal you scribble in. It could be like some shitty ass, I don't know, something from like high school that like you've never used. It doesn't have to be nice. It can just be anything that is there for you whenever you need it, whenever you just have something to get out and you have something to say. Just purge it all out and write it down. And there's a few different ways you can do that, and I think everyone at the end of the day has their own technique. So for me, like in high school when I first started journaling, I would try to write every single day, and that was like my goal. I know, like, I just watched a YouTube video of Jen M. She's like a blogger or something, but she says that she writes every single day 3 pages in the morning, and it's called like her morning journal entry. Like, I don't know, she's a cute catchy name for it. I have no idea what she calls it, but basically it's just like a morning prompt entry, and you just write whatever you're thinking, you get it out on paper, and then it's like a weight lifted off your chest for the rest of the day. I know for other people, like my sister Sarah, she writes whenever she feels like there's something to say. So she won't write every single day, but she will write like if something really crazy happens to her, or she's like a funny memory or a little anecdote, she'll write it down because she wants to remember it. And so, this looks different for everyone. And I think when you look online and kind of like see what other people are doing, it can be like a little intimidating. You could be like, oh, like Jen Am writes 3 pages a day every single day. Like, how does she even do that? I don't even know how to tackle that. Like, honestly, that's kind of how I felt when I heard that, because I can barely write every single day because sometimes I just forget or I just get caught up with my life. But the most important thing is just like finding what works for you and finding what brings you joy and I don't know, like helps you in your own journey. It might look different for everyone, but I would recommend start out by, if you've never written before, you look up on Pinterest, look up on Google or something, just some casual journal prompts to start have you thinking, especially if you don't know where to start. And that is like a great place to begin your journey of just like writing and recognizing your feelings. And you'll be able to, and I've said this in a past podcast episode, I believe our first one, you'll be able to look back in your previous entries and see how far you've come. And like that's the craziest thing for me is like I've been writing since like 9th grade and in high school, and like I'm in college now. And it's crazy to like look back and like just see like my super dramatic ass entries, which like honestly part of myself cringes, but then I also see like how much I was like struggling with my mental health and like how down I felt. And then now I can write and be like, wow, like how much has changed since then. So yeah, it's a really beautiful thing to just document your feelings, to be able to look back and also just like as you're writing, figure out like what are the deeply rooted issues that you're going through. And it can really help you find a lot of clarity by writing them down. Long story short, I know that was a little bit long and a little bit circular at times, but journal. It's the best thing. It's one of the best investments you can make in your mental health. The second thing I would do is talk to a friend, especially when you trust. So, and someone that holds space for you, which we can talk about relationships in a future episode. But make sure you search for a relationship that this person holds space and validates your feelings. They care for you. They want to see you do better and live like your best possible life. Those kind of friendships are hard to come by, but hold on to them for as long as you can. I know me and John have that friendship, and it's so nice having a friend that you can just literally say anything to, and they'll just like be like, okay, that was like either really fucking weird or, oh, like that was sad, or, like whatever it is. I just say like the weirdest shit sometimes, as you can tell. And they still like hold space, and they don't try to tell you you're, I don't know, inferior or anything like that. But look for a friend that holds space for you. That's my rounded up way of saying that. And then the third thing I would do is know that sometimes you can't do it on your own. And that's what's like really shitty, because I feel like for so long I like just saw my anxiety and I was like, okay, this is just something I can change with habits, right? So if I stop procrastinating, I won't get anxious about all the work I have to do and everything I have to do in the future. If I just stop doing that, and like I can retrain myself, right? Okay, wrong. If you have anxiety, like sometimes you just are so mobilized by your emotions and your feelings and like just that like circular, like never ending loop of thoughts and fears and everything, that you just feel like literally trapped and immobilized. And especially if you struggle with mental health, like you can probably relate to that in some way. Like sometimes it's not just easy to be like, okay, wake up every morning at 5:00 a.m. and be super productive all day and you'll never have any problems like you see all over the internet. Like, no, that's not how that works. In real life, like we're all human beings. We're not like superhuman or something. I don't know. So just know that sometimes you can't do it alone and you can't do it by yourself. And I think like that's one of the hardest things I had to come to terms with my mental health, is that for years and years and years, I put it on my own shoulders and I put it on my own back and I said, hey, it's you and me till the end. Like, we're gonna do this. Anxiety, like, I don't know, it's almost like I befriended it. I was so used to it that I don't know. I just got used to it. And eventually I just had to realize that was not something I could do on my own. And so when you recognize that in yourself, I feel like a great resource to go to is a therapist. Nowadays, there's so many online therapy resources, and even some of them are actually free. I really wish I had it off the top of my head, but hopefully I can send it to John if he posts this and have it in the description. But there actually is an online foundation that we post about it on our Instagram that is offering free therapy for people of color, to just like break down, because I feel like, at least I've heard, I'm not a person of color, I think, as I previously mentioned, but I have heard from hearing other Black and brown stories that often it's like really hard to talk about mental health issues in that community, and it's even hard to talk about it in like, I don't know, just in fucking society, because like sometimes we just suck a little bit, but that's what this podcast is for, and so just know that there are resources to where if you are a person of color, like, you can get free therapy. And how amazing would that be? You would not even have to pay for it, and you could be bettering yourself starting tomorrow, or even right now. You could sign up. So definitely check out our Instagram at BKTY Podcast. I know I've posted it there, but also I will give John the information to put it in our description for this podcast episode. So yeah, go to therapy, talk it out. There's nothing like talking to someone who doesn't know anything about you and your life, and just being able to like purge your emotions. It's something else. It hits different, let me tell you. I know that was kind of ridiculous to say, but like, it's really true. Like, there's no better feeling. And so I guess most importantly, beyond everything, which is, what we're always trying to hone in on in our episodes, is be kind to yourself. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. Like, that is literally the human experience. Like, we are built to feel uncomfortable. It's part of our fight or flight response. So hold space for that. Hold space for that feeling. Acknowledge it. And then let it go. Once you've realized that, realize what that feeling is. And I think most importantly, I'm definitely like victim of this, of feeling immobilized. Like, there's nothing I can do to change my situation, especially when it comes to mental health issues and my anxiety. But just know that you can. You literally can. And by listening to this episode, if you're, this far in it, you would know that like you're already taking the first steps to making change for yourself and acknowledging those feelings. Like, obviously you're interested in like mental health and self-help and betterment, that you would stay this long in this podcast to listen to that. So just know it's possible, and you're doing it. Like, you're on the right track. And like, give yourself a hug for me, and be kind to yourself, and like give yourself some nice words, because you're already on your path to literally being like the best fucking version of yourself, and celebrate it, because you fucking rock. Obviously, as you can tell, me and John have really different styles of doing this podcast. Mine include a lot of swear words, which I sometimes try to do, or not try to do, like, it just fucking comes out. But you might have noticed. But just, yeah, like, overall, just be kind to yourself. And thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I'm pretty sure I have like some kind of outro I'm supposed to say. What is it? Let me look it up. Okay. Thank you for tuning in to the BKTY podcast. You can find all updates and information on our Twitter and our Instagram at BKTY podcast. For all of our listeners, have a wonderful day. And as always, don't forget to be kind to yourselves. Which, that definitely sounded a little robotic, but I stand by all of that. Have the best fucking day ever. Crush it. Journal. And yeah, really just be kind to yourself. Okay, bye. Love you guys.